My wife just left me, but I don't care because it's Week 8 NFL review time. Green Bay versus Arizona. Probably the biggest regular season win of the 2021 season thus far. The extremely undermanned Packers went into Arizona and beat the previously undefeated Cardinals 24-21. This was the most Tom Brady-esque win of Aaron Rodgers' career. 10 of Green Bay's 24 points came off of extremely short fields. He rarely threw the ball deep, and his defense bailed him out at the end with a memorable interception. But you know what? It's about time Rodgers got some good fortune to go his way in a big game. Kevin King. Kyler Murray, at least for the moment, took himself out of the MVP race by throwing 2 interceptions, including the brutal aforementioned game-losing interception at the 5-yard line with 15 seconds left. The throw wasn't necessarily Kyler's fault, as AJ Green, the intended receiver on the play, didn't even look for the ball. So there was an obvious miscommunication somewhere. It is interesting to note, though, that his last name, Green, is the same color as marijuana. Coincidence? I don't think so. Philadelphia versus Detroit. As an Eagles fan, I'm obviously beyond happy we won, and won big, 44-6, but at the same time, I do feel a little bit bad since it was against the Detroit Lions, who are arguably the worst team in the league. It felt a little like beating up a Make-A-Wish kid, to be honest. Not that it mattered really, but I found it humorous that Jalen Hurts found a way to not throw a touchdown pass despite winning by 38 points. That's hard to do. As everybody knows, I am a man of impeccable integrity and honor, and I admit when I'm wrong. And therefore, I must admit that I gave Jared Goff far too much credit this offseason by labeling him an average quarterback. He sucks major ass and was propped up by McVay for years. I'm on board now with the Goff hate train. At least on the field, he seems like a good guy off of it. It's almost impossible for me to celebrate this win because, what is even the point? Detroit is probably going to go 1-16 or 0-17, and that franchise is going to be just as unsuccessful over the next 60 years as they have been for the last 60 years. If you lose to the Lions, you honestly deserve to be thrown in jail. Carolina versus Atlanta. If you get an erection from watching punts and field goals, then you would have absolutely had to have called a doctor after watching this battle between two NFC South bottom dwellers. Carolina took a 12-10 lead heading into the fourth, but Arizona missed a 45-yard field goal. Carolina then went on a long touchdown drive to go up by 9 with 6.5 minutes left. The game essentially ended when Matt Ryan, who had been playing really well over the last month, threw an interception to Stephon Gilmore with 2 minutes left. Atlanta would tack on a field goal with 21 seconds left to make it 19-13, but their onside kick didn't work, and Carolina held on to the win. As the biggest hater of racism on the entire planet, I was extremely disappointed that Matt Rule went back to starting Sam Darnold over PJ Walker, which, I'm sad to say, brought racism back to life. Thanks a lot, Matt. Pittsburgh versus Cleveland. Watching this game, I was extremely disappointed the Browns didn't do a pregame tribute to celebrate how much Ben Roethlisberger respects women. Ben obviously took this personally as he led Pittsburgh to a super thrilling and unbelievably exciting 15-10 win. This was a 3-3 game at halftime and a 10-3 Cleveland lead midway through the third after a D'Ernest Johnson touchdown run. Ironically enough, Pittsburgh nearly fucked themselves over by getting their kicker injured on a fake field goal attempt in the first half, so when they scored a touchdown to make it 10-9 in the third quarter, they had to go for 2 and missed. Pittsburgh took a 15-10 lead early in the fourth quarter after a 2-yard touchdown pass on 4th and 2, which they only went for because, you guessed it, they didn't have a kicker. Pittsburgh missed a 2-point conversion on that as well. Cleveland's following drive ended with Jarvis Landry fumbling deep in Pittsburgh territory. Cleveland would get one more chance to win, but Baker Mayfield's 4th down pass went right through Landry's hands and Pittsburgh ran out the clock. Pittsburgh will always find a way to be average or have a winning record no matter how goddamn boring and awful they are to watch. Odell Beckham sucks now and has ruined the chemistry Cleveland had. Baker Mayfield is a swaggy version of Jeff Garcia. San Francisco versus Chicago. Outside of one great touchdown throw by Justin Fields, this game had a pretty nondescript first half, which ended with Chicago ahead 13-9. Chicago added a field goal to go up 7 in the third before San Francisco woke up thanks to their beautiful and sexy quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo leading the charge. Jimmy G ended up throwing for over 300 yards and running for 2 touchdowns, proving he's so much more than just a perfectly chiseled sex god. Elijah Mitchell ran for almost 140 yards and a touchdown. Deebo Samuel continued his all-pro caliber season by racking up 171 receiving yards, and totally not racist Nick Bosa added 2 more sacks to his season total to give San Francisco a crucial 33-22 win. Justin Fields had what was probably his best game as a pro so far, although the bar is the floor in that regard. He had a beautiful aforementioned touchdown pass in the first half and a super awesome 22-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter to make it a 1-point game. Fields had over 100 rushing yards, but remember, he's still a Bears quarterback, so his final passing numbers weren't anything impressive. Was it just a coincidence that Fields had his best game with Matt Nagy out due to COVID? I'm sure there's no correlation whatsoever, right? Right? LA Rams versus Houston. If one were to just look at the final score, a 38-22 Rams win, they could be tricked into thinking this was a competitive game at some point before the Rams eventually pulled away at the very end. But instead, this was an example of some historical stat padding. The Rams did exactly what everybody thought they'd do for 3 quarters, taking a 38-0 lead into the final stanza before Davis Mills in Houston scored 22 unanswered points to reach the final score. Good for Davis Mills. You pad those stats and get a second contract so you can stay in the league for a decade as a backup. Matthew Stafford, on the other hand, continued his stellar season, throwing 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and almost 10 yards per attempt. As of this moment, Stafford is probably the MVP frontrunner. New York Jets versus Cincinnati. This is exactly why you do not trust the Bengals. A week after a great road win over a tough Baltimore team, they crap their pants against a terrible Jets team. But before I keep roasting the Bengals, I wonder how concerned Jets fans are that a Madden-generated quarterback named Mike White looks leaps and bounds better than the second overall pick who plays the exact same position. What happens if Mike White, not to be racist, keeps looking good when Wilson is healthy enough to play? What happens if Wilson gets the job back, continues to suck, then the fans turn on him forever? Anyway, this game looked over when Cincinnati took a 31-20 lead with 7.5 minutes left. But White, no offense to Sean King, led a touchdown drive to make it 31-27, then Joe Burrow threw a terrible interception to set up the Jets with a 14-yard touchdown drive to give them a 34-31 lead with 3:45 left. Since he got the ball back but had to punt, then New York ran out the rest of the clock to secure the upset. The Jets now have more wins over winning teams than the Buccaneers. This is coming 1 year after the Jets had more regular season wins over playoff teams than the Buccaneers. Wow, I'm so stunned. Tennessee versus Indianapolis. What a game this was. Indy rushed out to a 14-0 lead after one before Tennessee answered back with 2 touchdowns of their own to help make it a 17-14 Indianapolis lead heading into halftime. The teams exchanged touchdowns in the third to make it 24-21 Indy going into the fourth. Tennessee tied the game at 24 on a field goal early in the fourth before shit got crazy. Tied at 24 with a minute and a half left at his own 2-yard line, Carson Wentz went full Wentz by throwing a brutal interception that was returned for a touchdown to give Tennessee a 31-24 lead. Then, with the help from a dumb 42-yard defensive pass interference penalty by the refs, Wentz atoned for his mistake, leading a game-tying 75-yard touchdown drive to make it 31-all going into overtime. But immediately after atoning for his brutal interception, Wentz threw another interception in overtime to set up Tennessee deep in Indianapolis territory, which they would capitalize on to win 34-31. Tennessee improved to 6-2, but the news of Derrick Henry missing the rest of the season is a huge blow, although in my opinion not as much of a blow as many think. I believe Tannehill is capable of stepping up his production and Tennessee will be alright. Seattle versus Jacksonville. There aren't a lot of things more depressing in life than losing to Geno Smith by 24 points, but Jacksonville somehow managed to do it. Geno threw for 2 touchdowns and ran for another in a ridiculously easy 31-7 Seattle win. Also wasn't pretty to watch Trevor Lawrence in this game, as his final numbers were bad, and that's with Lawrence padding them a ton in garbage time. I will give Urban Meyer props for going 3 weeks without generating a new national controversy. That has to be a personal record for him. Seattle's win might not matter in the big picture, but a loss would have dropped them to 2-6 and maybe forced Russell Wilson to not come back this year at all. But now at 3-5, with just a little bit of hope left, Russ is more motivated to return and possibly salvage the season. Buffalo versus Miami. You're not going to believe this, but one of the best teams in the NFL, Buffalo, defeated one of the worst teams in the NFL, Miami, at home by a score of 26-11. This was a boring as fuck 3-3 game at halftime before Buffalo head coach Sean McDermott told his players that they better win or else they won't wake up the next morning. Josh Allen, who looks like he could be a softball pitcher for the University of Oklahoma, responded to this not-so-veiled threat by throwing 2 touchdown passes to take a 17-3 lead into the fourth. Miami answered with a touchdown run and 2-point conversion by Tua Fragile to make it 17-11 with 10 minutes left, but Buffalo then went on a long field goal drive to take a 9-point lead with 3.5 minutes left. Tua threw an interception with his tiny little noodle arm to set up Buffalo at Miami's 11, which Buffalo then turned into a touchdown on a Josh Allen run to go up by 15 and end the game. If not for a Damian Harris fumble in week 1, Miami would be 0-8 right now. New England versus the LA Chargers. It pains me to say this as somebody who loves watching him play, but Justin Herbert has been dog shit the last 2 weeks and must be called out for it. People can blame the play calling and O-line all they want, but Herbert deserves some blame as well. Both teams got off to a hot start as LA had a 14-7 lead early in the second quarter, but then the game became a grind. No offense to Urban Meyer. New England kicked 3 straight field goals to go up 16-14 late in the third before LA kicked a field goal to take a 17-16 lead into the fourth. LA had the ball looking to potentially put the game away in the fourth, but Herbert and Jared Cook had a miscommunication on a throw, which was picked off and returned for a touchdown and 2-point conversion to give New England a 7-point lead with 10 minutes left. LA punted, then New England went on a 7-minute long field goal drive to go up 27-17 and essentially ice the game with a few minutes left. LA would score a touchdown to make it 27-24 with 40 seconds left, but their onside kick failed. Don't look now, but New England is 4-4, and as long as Mac Jones doesn't turn out to be bad, which it looks like he won't, New England will win a decent amount of games every year for the foreseeable future. Denver versus Washington. Oh my god, God, yes, what a super exciting game this was. There were 3 missed field goals, 2 interceptions, and just 3 touchdowns. For the most part, this game was just 55 minutes or so of large, sweaty men in spandex rubbing up against each other. Which, look, I'm not into kink shaming if that's what gets you going, but personally, I need more to satisfy my football urges. It wasn't until the final 5 minutes that this game got interesting. Denver took a 7-point lead with 4.5 minutes left on a Melvin Gordon touchdown run. Washington then drove all the way to Denver's 7 at one point before Taylor Heineke fumbled to set up 4th and 19, which unsurprisingly ended with an interception with 37 seconds left. The game was now over, right? Wrong. Gordon fumbled the ball back to Washington deep in Denver territory, but luckily for Denver, Washington was unable to capitalize, going 4 and out to end the game. Washington is now 2-6 and awful on the field once again, while they have a major email scandal story off the field. Dan Snyder remains an evil scumbag, and Denver remains the most boring and uninteresting 4-4 team in the world. New Orleans versus Tampa Bay. This game started the same way as usual, with Tom Brady getting a short field, then dinking and dunking his way to a touchdown pass to give Tampa a 7-0 lead. Jameis Winston threw a dime touchdown to tie it at 7 in the second quarter before he left the game with what ended up being a season-ending ACL injury. He was replaced by Trevor Siemian, who ended up doing an okay job as a game manager the rest of the way, while Brady was busy committing 3 terrible turnovers and overthrowing open receivers, except on 1 touchdown to Mike Evans. New Orleans would eventually take a 23-7 lead early in the third before the typical Brady bullshit happened. Tons of yak and his defense stepping up eventually led to Tampa taking a 27-26 lead with 6 minutes left. You will not believe this, but Brady's go-ahead touchdown pass with 6 minutes left was on a busted coverage where his receiver was open by 30 yards. I know, I can't believe it either. New Orleans then drove the ball into field goal range where Sean Payton almost sabotaged the entire ending by calling 3 pass plays that took up 0 clock. New Orleans kicked the field goal to go up 29-27 with 1:41 left. Everybody expected Brady to lead a game-clinching drive, and they were absolutely correct, as he threw a brutal pick 6 to end the game and seal the 36-27 loss for Tampa. I've said it for years, if you make Brady make tough throws downfield, he is extremely average. I love watching him eat shit so much. He's a cheater and his fans are absolute cancer. Unfortunately, we all know Brady is still going to win the Super Bowl after throwing 3 interceptions in the conference championship game and getting 5 different drives starting at his opponent's 1-yard line in the playoffs. Dallas versus Minnesota. What a strangely boring, then somewhat exciting game this turned out to be. Dak Prescott didn't play because he had herpes in his calf or something, so Dallas' starting quarterback was Cooper Rush, who ended up actually throwing for 325 yards and 2 touchdowns. Is Dak a system quarterback? Minnesota's offense looked great on the opening drive, marching 75 yards for a touchdown, but after that managed just 9 points on their last 10 drives. Minnesota took a 16-13 lead with 2:51 left before Rush led Dallas on a 75-yard touchdown drive that ended with a 5-yard touchdown pass to Amari Cooper with 51 seconds left. Some QBs would have thrown a pick 6 in that situation, but not Cooper Rush. Minnesota had to drive 75 yards for a touchdown to win, but the drive fizzled out in hilarious fashion and Minnesota lost. Thus is the plight of a Kirk Cousins team. They win when they should lose, and they lose when they should win. In the end, you get a lot of mediocre records and disappointment. As for Dallas, this could end up being their best team ever that fails to make the NFC Championship game. Kansas City versus the New York Giants. This ended up being another sloppy and boring game that left neither team feeling good about themselves. The Giants still suck, shocking. The Chiefs should have won this game in a blowout, but instead they barely squeaked out a 20-17 win at home against a horrible team. KC's offense continued to look awful and discombobulated. Mahomes looked mediocre, throwing another red zone interception. Travis Kelce fumbled away a possession, and none of Kansas City's receivers can seem to get open downfield. Mahomes isn't trusting what he sees and is hesitant. This is a far cry from what we've come to expect from a team that has destroyed opponents the last 3 years. Perhaps Mahomes is going through the same unexpected doldrums his next opponent, Aaron Rodgers, did in 2015. I still have no doubt Mahomes will eventually regain his top form, but I don't know if it'll be this season. The Giants had a shot to win this game multiple times in the fourth quarter with the score tied at 17 and down 20-17, but couldn't do anything. How hard do you think Joe Judge is fapping to the taunting penalty his team got called for in the fourth quarter? I think violently. A week ago, I asked my subscribers what you wanted me to improve on, and many said they didn't want such an abrupt ending to my videos. So, because I'm such a good fucking person, here's a bunch of puppies to help you feel better.